Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for being here. I guess good afternoon to some of you as well, possibly good morning. So these conversations, we're glad to have everyone here tonight, but these conversations came about as a result of questions that we were receiving from students and recent graduates regarding the status of different areas within the industry as a result of the COVID pandemic, the death of George Floyd, and just overall global unrest. Tonight is actually our third conversation in an ongoing series, and we'll focus on the area of high-end design, and we're pleased to have two wonderful alumni with us who have built phenomenal careers working for fantastic firms. Our session will be moderated by Dean Michael Speaks, and we'll start with introductions and then move in through a few questions, and then we will open it up to questions from the audience as well, focusing specifically on those students and recent graduates. So I will turn it over to Dean Speaks.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Thanks for helping organize this. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. As Kristen said, this is the third of these events, and we'll continue to have these throughout the course of the year. Initially, we started to have these, as Kristen was saying, to really get our thesis students who are currently in thesis and our students last year who were visited, well, who entered into a terrible job market, and many of them are still looking and wondering what it looks like on the horizon. So we've been inviting members of our alum and board to have kind of small intimate conversations about their firms and what they're doing, what they think of the environment outside the firms. So inside the firm, outside the firm, and then we're trying to offer some advice to students. So we're thrilled tonight to have not only two alum, but two members of our board of advisors, Margaret Griffin from Griffin Enright, and Sara Lopergolo from Selldorf Architects, one East Coast, one West Coast. This will be the dueling super design offices tonight. Yeah, so we're looking forward just to a conversation about their offices, how they ended up where they are from Syracuse maybe, and what's happening at the office right now, what kind of projects do they do. So I'm gonna start by thanking them both for joining us tonight. And maybe I'll start by, because Margaret appears closer to me than Sara does on the Zoom screen. Everything now, I think, gets situated like that. I'm going to start by asking Margaret maybe a little bit about the office, about the work that you all do. What's the profile of the office? What's the size of it? How are you doing in the crazy world that we live in right now, driven obviously by all of the things that have resulted from the COVID lockdown initially? I know you had a very different situation initially than we did in LA, and then it got worse than it was here. And I'm not sure where it is now, probably where like it is here, but how are you all dealing with COVID? What's happening with Griffin Enright vis-a-vis diversity, equity, inclusion, and representation issues and lack of diversity in the profession, et cetera, et cetera. So Margaret, you can answer any and all of those at once. I'm sorry, I asked about 10 questions.
I'll just jump in and
say, go ahead, Margaret.
Okay, so our firm is I would say we might be considered a boutique progressive firm. Typically we're anywhere from 10 to 12 people. Right now we're a little bit smaller. We're around 8. We we've been home, working from home since March 15th. Our entire office is still working remotely. I'm at my house right now. My partner, the Enright part of the firm, is John Enright. He's also my husband. We both met at Syracuse, as some of you may know. He usually works in the office because our office is an open room, and it's difficult to have two people Zooming in one space. So I tend to stay here. He works at the office. He says, you know, he's taken on all these new roles, like he's head of tech, he's head of printing. We have it, what do we call, like curbside printing? Griffin Enright curbside printing. Griffin Enright, like once in a while, all the computers go down. Yesterday, there was an electrical problem. He had to go around, start all the computers. Everyone in our office is working off of the office computers, but from home. So when he's there, he can actually see what everyone is doing, which is also kind of funny. We were lucky to keep our team all the way through the COVID, and we are lucky to have work the whole way through. And in Los Angeles, if you're working in housing, those projects can still be under construction because housing in LA is considered an essential service because we have such a housing shortage. So we have several projects under construction, and we got a few new projects during COVID. So we have new clients who we meet on Zoom, which is a new way of doing it. We occasionally meet our new clients in person to review, let's say, materials, things like that. But we do a lot of the work with our clients on Zoom. And we actually have a whole bunch of potential new projects that we've been getting calls about in the last few weeks, and some big projects. So we feel incredibly lucky. We recently hired a new person. We may be in a position to hire a few new people if some of these things come through. So from our perspective, it seems like, I mean, I can only guess that one of the reasons why, I mean, the bulk of our work, we do a lot of custom residential. We do some schools. We also do some like office buildings, small ones, and we do some like apartment buildings and stuff like that. So it's kind of well-rounded. The main characteristic that links it all is a contemporary design, and people come to us because they see our work and they're interested in it. Yeah, recently we've been getting a lot of calls for new work and having a lot of meetings for new work. And I don't know, I guess I wonder if it has a lot to do with the stock market. There are people who've made a lot of money in the stock market in the last year. And I think that they are looking to diversify their market in real estate, especially in LA. But some of the calls for new work that we've gotten is in China, Southeast Asia. And that's largely because one of our big projects that we did in Chengdu, China, 42 townhomes on an island in a new city south of Chengdu was recently kind of completed and is starting to get some notoriety. So I don't know, maybe we'll be able to leverage that into some more work in both China and the one project that we're starting to talk to a client about is in Vietnam. But basically it's because he saw the project in Chengdu. So, you know, I think there's definitely parts of the country where architecture is still happening. I'm curious about in Sarah's case, what's going on with them.
Yeah, sure. So we similarly all began working remotely in March 14th exactly. We're a 65 person firm. I would say in March we were 70 and we had to let go of a few people right away because we lost one or two projects right at the onset. And a lot of that was understandably out of sort of fear of what was to happen and people wanting to hold back. Since then, some of those projects have actually come back, which is great. We have a big variety of work as well. And I think that's actually, really a good thing to be as diversified as you can in these times. And so, you know, from luxury, if you will, homes to museum work that we're doing and some commercial projects, there still seems to be some optimism out there. And we are recently actually getting a few phone calls for some new work as well. Our office is technically open now. We've put in all these provisions for people to go to the office. There's an app that you sign in so that you can see whether or not someone would be sitting next to you if you were to go in. So you actually wouldn't be allowed to go in if the person next to you is also signed in. So you have to find another way to maybe be in the conference room or be in another space. And I think we're not finding that many people are actually going back into the office. It's pretty sparse, maybe 5 to 6 people at a time, which is, you know, we have a nice, wonderful space on Union Square, but a lot of people commute, so they have to take the subway. So there isn't a huge enthusiasm to get on the subway every day. So I think that's the main reason why we're seeing maybe not as many people back in, but we're okay with that. We've been working, you know, Zoom land since March, and everyone learned rather quickly how to mobilize and get every, you know, technology at home up to gear so that we could all communicate and work well together. We have tons of client meetings that way, obviously, and learning. We're a very hands-on drawing type of office. So that I would say was one of the biggest challenges, probably from my Annabelle's end up, just that like hands-on, lack of hands-on, which has been challenging. But, you know, we've also become quite adept at Zoom annotation and Bluebeam and all those kinds of programs that have really facilitated that kind of communication. And I think what's been nice and positive about these Zoom meetings, however horrible they can be at the same time, is that we actually are able to bring the whole team on a Zoom call where normally we might not do that. So it's really been great to have some more of the junior staff involved in all of these sort of day meetings, which has been really nice.
Are you guys using Slack?
Could I ask you?
Teams.
Oh.
Teams.
Yeah.
Teams. Could I ask you, make just a quick observation. If anyone has questions, please post them in the chat, and along the way, I'll ask them, and we'll certainly get to them at the end. But I want to ask, maybe related to Sarah's last point, are there things, and also this may relate to Margaret's observation about a lot of the new work in Asia. Are there things that using these technologies, you simply will not be able to return to when things become more like they used to be? Of course, they will never be like they used to be, but are there things using these platforms, are there ways of attracting and discussing projects with clients and with your teams that you've learned with this, you know, with the onset of COVID, that you would probably not have done, but now you will have to do forever just because they're so important, useful, and efficient? I wonder, especially Margaret, given, you know, that a lot of the new projects that you all that are coming to you are coming from Asia, and they're obviously hard to meet clients and hard to pitch projects unless you can do that.
Yeah, so for us, one of the major shifts that I think it's actually going to be a great silver lining to the whole COVID is all the multiplicity of platforms that we're engaged in for communication. You know, WeChat. So if we're communicating with a client in Asia, it's all through WeChat, uploading everything through WeChat, PDFs, images, like everything, to like WhatsApp. You know, like I have a WhatsApp with my students who are all here, and that's a super convenient way to communicate and do stuff quick, you know, communicate quickly to my students. To like Slack, which I use both with my students and in our office, and Slack has been transformative in our office. where we can just have different channels for different projects and just upload everything we need for the different channels. And it's like creates this whole memory. It cuts down on email. You can like go back up and see like, oh, where's that PDF of that code that we need to remember? Where's that material that we picked? Like, it's super revolutionary actually. And without COVID, we might not have moved as quickly into some of these technologies that I think we're doing much less printing. Just like Sarah was talking about, we're using Bluebeam and a lot of screenshots. So marking stuff up in Bluebeam, screenshotting it, putting it on Slack, like boom, you're done. There's your red mark. So a lot less printing, which is really a big deal because like in the back of our studio, I mean, our studio no doubt is much smaller than, you know, where Sarah works because we only have like 12 to 15 people at the most. But in the back of the studio, we have 2 sheds and they're full of like old drawings, like just like walls and walls full of drawings. I mean, it's just crazy how much stuff we have in those sheds. I did it last summer. We did a whole paper shredding, and it was like our whole parking lot was filled up with paper and we shredded it all. And I still have stuff we could get rid of. So I'm actually super excited about like a little bit more of a paperless existence. But there's been a lot of efficiencies that we've learned in spite of the fact that sometimes, you know, of course there's inherent inefficiencies in not being able to just be like in the same room all the time and be like, hey, you know what I mean, this, you know what I mean, just more quickly. Because our office is one room and normally it was like very easy to say, okay, did you do that? Did you do that? Did you do that? But Slack has really helped with that.
Yeah, we use Teams, which is exactly the same as Slack, but a different company, I guess. I have found that with some clients, the Zoom has actually been really good for them to, because we can zoom in to certain aspects of a plan that normally a piece of paper on a table. Already sometimes for clients, it's challenging to understand plans and architectural drawings. So the ability to be able to zoom into a section of a drawing for them has really been very helpful, and the interaction and the feedback has been very good in that way. So that is a silver lining, and we probably will continue to work more like that with some clients.
And also, maybe you find this too, Sarah, but working with consultants is super great on Zoom. We can have a 3D model. We can have our Rhino model open. We can have a clipping plane on our Rhino model, and we can figure out like where the HVAC is moving. We can have our structural engineer on the phone, and we can have a clipping plane through our Rhino model, and we can be looking at the structural plan and our Rhino model and discussing like where we're going to do HVAC. Because like in houses, we don't always hire a mechanical engineer. We sort of troubleshoot it. We make certain assumptions about it ourselves sometimes. So stuff like that is just really fantastic.
Yeah.
Could I, so that's wonderful to hear. Actually, all of this is very good news so far. I have just a couple of questions. I mean, you both are Syracuse graduates. You both were here, and I think Sarah alluded to hand drawing earlier, or maybe it was Margaret, and just the importance of hand drawing. Sarah came up and did a workshop, I think, with us, I don't know, a couple of years, maybe a year or so ago. And yeah. Margaret has been in and out of the school and done many things here. And I know Margaret obviously teaches as well. Many of our students now, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, many of our students don't want to practice architecture in a conventional sense, whatever that means, whatever it means to them and whatever that means in the world. What I think is really interesting about both of your firms is that the caricature is, and sorry for the caricature, is that both of your firms do beautiful design work, smaller scale, exquisite, beautiful museums, beautiful houses, beautiful cultural projects. But in point of fact, both firms do not only larger scale projects, but I think both of you have been pretty involved in strategic planning, strategic thinking about, for organizations, which is an area of, I guess, architectural practice that many people don't think a lot about, but architects are trained by virtue, especially of the 5-year professional degree program, are trained to think and act and operate in that way. I wonder, could either or both of you say something about your training as architects, what that enables you to do, how that works at the firm, and the variety of the kinds of things that you do at the firm? Because I think it's very surprising, even to people who know your firms well, to go on the website and look at the great variety of kinds of things that you're doing.
Sure. I'll just jump in. I always tell the story, but I think it's a good one. And in that, well, first to say that I think, essentially architecture is somewhat at its core about problem solving. And I think the training of an architect is amazing wherever you decide to take it, because you are sort of thinking of multiple aspects to solve a problem. But we were asked to do a competition for a recycling center, and we had never done one before, but we pitched for it and we got the job. And really what they wanted us to do was just design the skin around these prefabricated buildings. And we came in and we were like, well, the whole place is a mess. It's like just been, engineered, and just buildings dropped all over the place. And we took it upon ourselves to master plan that entire 16-acre site. And it wasn't just about skinning the buildings. It was much more important to organize the transportation and the way in which because people actually work in these places, for people to actually circulate around the property safely. And so I think that's an example of we weren't necessarily asked to do that, definitely not. The engineers on the project that were there before us were like, what are you guys doing? We'll get out of here, just do some pretty drawings. But we were insistent that it was much more important than the pretty skin. So I think that's a good example of where architects can insert themselves in a good and positive way for the betterment of the environment.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would maybe characterize it in a similar but maybe slightly different way, which is that a lot of our projects have to do with a kind of strategic invention. Like oftentimes we're trying to, in many of our, like in the school projects especially, every single design move that we make in the project usually takes care of 3 or 4 problems at a time. So the kind of double and triple functioning of things is something we think about a lot. In terms of thinking about program, I think a lot of times there's a place where we can be really inventive too, because clients can describe to you what they think they want, but actually what they really need is often something they can't describe because they don't know it, or they don't know how to think about it because they haven't seen it. So a lot of our work in the custom homes is a lot about like really understanding our clients, like sort of traditions and even rituals and kind of the way they live. And then many of the houses are made in such a way that we capitalize on some of the qualities of our clients' lives, and we make like a new way for them to live, literally something that they wouldn't have been able to tell us at the onset, but something that when it's built, they're like, wow, this is perfect. Or even in the school that we did for St. Thomas, that outdoor public space that we made was one of those things. It was never part of the program. It was like, we kind of cheated it into the program by like basically taking a basic cantilever, and that's how we made the space. So it was super cost effective to do. And at the end of the project, the father, whose name was Father Jay, after a few months of using it, he said, I never understood what this space was going to be. You guys always said we needed it. And he's like, this space is the most important part of our whole project. We use it in so many impromptu ways. And so a lot of times it's like the important thing that an architect can bring to any problem is vision. a kind of vision about how to transform the way it's currently acting, or it's currently, like, we can bring new ways of thinking and new vision, whether that vision is at the scale. And so in our project, in our office, we do furniture, we do architecture, we do interiors, we do landscape, and we also do and so the landscape, you know, gets into kind of master planning, but we also do master planning. So it's like that kind of invention can like scale up or scale down as required, but like everything that we work on, we always try to be as strategic as possible, so that the design, it's not just only design aesthetic, it's like design thinking that really provides a transformation to the lives of the people. You can be really impactful while making something beautiful.
Margaret, I love everything you said, and I think it's especially important right now, especially in New York City, and in general about cities, because there's so much talk about it, the death of cities, and really architecture is about optimism and the future and having that vision. And, you know, it's just been really interesting to see how quickly New York City is transforming their sidewalks, and their, you know, what was primarily parking spaces, but have just been overtaken by the variety of sidewalk cafes. But because they have to have barricades and barriers, the creativity that's really ad hoc, you don't need an architect, I guess, but very ad hoc and creative ways in which the sidewalk and parking spaces are being taken over. But I think that optimism and that vision is what architects can bring to the problem solving, and it's especially the most important thing right now.
Yeah. And I think in architecture school, pretty much the skills you learn, because I think the one thing that fundamentally makes an architectural education different than other kinds of architectural education, especially at the undergraduate level, is that an architectural education is fundamentally more qualitative than almost any other undergraduate education that you can have, which are often more quantitative. So when you have a qualitative education, you're learning by doing. And you know, the kind of skills that you gain through like working through a set of problems and making a set of decisions and coming to conclusions by making a set of drawings, a set of models, like that, the kind of like taking vision into like a concrete form, like that skill can be translated to anything that you want to do. And it has it's especially well translated into entrepreneurial productions. Someone who has a skill set that allows you to do well in architecture school, that same skill set can be translated to so many other capacities. It doesn't have to only be architecture. It's a kind of a qualitative education that almost no other undergraduate student receives. I think that's super important.
Bringing things to resolution, right?
You're like
forced to do that.
Yeah, like having the kind of, it takes a certain gumption to have an idea and then like draw it out and like build it out, make a 3D model, make a set of, you know what I mean? Like really come to some choices, some decisive choices. And even if it's not perfect, it's like you get to, you bring it to a place of resolution. And then the whole act of like, you get it to a point of resolution, then you rethink it and you refine it and you bring it to another point of resolution. Then you rethink it, you refine it, and you know what I mean? That redundant kind of action of refinement is another capacity that you learn as an architect that is not a skill that everyone has. And the kind of training of it, the practice of it, the fact that it's 5 years and that you're practicing it every semester is part of what makes it like what really turns it into a skill that you have, that you can translate into almost any profession you would ever want to go into. Not that I want you guys to leave architecture, but I think another way that architects can impact your world is through volunteering. Volunteering, like well, like what Sarah and I do on the board at Syracuse, but even in your communities, local, like I served on the AIA board of directors. I served on the LA Forum for Architecture and Urban Design, which is a grassroots organization. That's a small institution, like a, well, not just small, but I mean, a 30-year-old institution in Los Angeles. So like we can bring our expertise out into the world in a whole variety of ways. And that's also a way to meet other people, to engage other people. I mean, so like reaching out through volunteer is a good way to expand your both your skill set and your connections. And so if I'm a young student and I'm looking for a job, maybe I can find some ways to volunteer in a kind of field that's similar to architecture in the meantime, to start to make connections, right? Like there's things you can do like that kind of get you out there in the world, and you can start to network and meet people, and one thing can lead to another.
Could I, Margaret, you mentioned that we were, you mentioned board service, and we were all on a meeting earlier today. We had a board meeting, and the topic, one of the topics of our board meeting today was scholarships for underrepresented minorities. We not only have been visited we had a virus, COVID-19, to deal with this year. We also have had a kind of a reckoning, both in schools and the profession, around issues of diversity, inclusion, equity, especially in the wake of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and some of the other tragic events that occurred over the summer. I wonder, especially since you are both principals in firms that were founded by and are led by women, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, let's say, diversity, equity, inclusion in your office and maybe in the profession in general, and where do you think we all need to be going, both in schools, profession, and what's happening in your office?
I guess so I think that, well, I would say that because we are 4 of our 5 partners are women and have been for a long time, and the majority of our project managers are women. We're 50-50 now, women and men in the whole office. I think for many years we felt like we checked the box, like, yeah, we're good. We're, we have gender equity, but clearly we fell short and continue to fall short in diversity. And I think a few years ago, we actually tried to implement a diversity program in the office. We called upon 3 people of color in our office. We asked them to sort of set something up, and they set up a really wonderful program, but then it fizzled out because the priority wasn't there. And not to say it wasn't important to us, but other things always seem to get in the way. And that simply has to be a different mode of thinking. And so since the summer, we have reestablished our equity, diversity, inclusion, really opened it up to the entire office, not relying on just people of color to carry the burden of that. And we are implementing lots of really, I would say first and foremost is sort of learning, like all that we need to learn, listening as much as we can, and then participating where we can. We all understand, I think, as architects, what the problem is in terms of the pipeline. And, the unfortunate part of this moment of COVID, where people are a little bit reluctant to hire or hire as many people as they need because everyone's just nervous about the future. It's hard to implement and get out there and hire the diversity that we would like, but trying to set everything up so that we can move quickly when we're ready to hire more people, so that we have a diverse group. And but it's been wonderful to have these conversations, group conversations in the office. I think the fact that we are all working remotely, to come together in Zooms to have specific conversations on this topic has been really important. And everyone has really participated and are really thrilled that we're doing it. So we've started a film club, and we're, we pick a film and everyone watches it and we have discussions about it. And they're all tough movies and tough topics. So we're trying. It's a tough road. Architecture in particular doesn't have a good track record.
Yeah. Well, our firm's a lot smaller, but I would just say that over the years, so we started in 2000, so we're 20 years old. We've always had an extremely diverse group of people, and all kinds of colors, all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of genders. Sometimes we are more women, sometimes we're more men. We're so much smaller that it's like for us, it's just about the quality of the person. And that comes in a whole variety of backgrounds. And, but nonetheless, so, maybe if we were bigger, we would have to have we can't have a diversity committee because it'd be the whole office, because that's like, we don't have enough people for committees, but we certainly are inclusive, and I feel like we always have been. Our group is a pretty tight-knit group. We, we like to have a lot of fun in our office, generally speaking, when we're there. So that's actually one of the things that is missing in the culture that we have now, is we try, we work very hard in the office, but when we're all in the office, there's generally, because our office is one room, it's generally some banter. Do you know what I mean? We have happy hours a couple of times a week. We find stuff. We're in a bowling league that we like to promote a kind of culture of the office such that it's a fun place to be, even though we're all working hard. And we, generally speaking, our employees, we don't have a high turnover. We have people come and stay for quite some time. Usually maybe they're leaving because they're moving to another city, or because they're, going back to grad school or whatever it is. But usually people stay with us for a pretty decent amount of time. But nonetheless, I guess the way that we're trying to impact it is through donations. So we've made a lot of donations. We are part of the donations for the Architecture Foundation. That was part of the article in the New York Times. We're going to contribute to the Syracuse's effort on this. And we do have a whole series of Black clients. And one of the things I did when this whole thing was going down is I really called each one of them up and just, I was curious about their perspective. And I just said, I know I don't understand what it's like. And I just really wanted to understand more from each one of them, how they felt about what was going on. And that was super fascinating, really fascinating. And I heard a bunch of disconcerting stories, obviously, but I was so glad I took the time to do that, because I wouldn't have understood. Because obviously if they're hiring us, they're highly successful people. I wouldn't have understood things that they have gone through if I hadn't reached out and asked them. And that perspective was just so useful. It was so helpful to understand. I was so happy that I took the time to do that, because it really left a impression on me, and it made me very motivated to want to participate more in this issue, which I think in my case I can probably help move it along more through support with universities. So today, when I think it was Colleen was talking about the program in the middle schools, I thought that was super amazing. That's like a good way to kind of start even younger, so that you can start to have to address the fact that, like, how do you even envision yourself as an architect, you know?
Yeah, you need role models.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Role models and pipeline issues and reaching, schools reaching out, obviously. And, we've done some of this. We're trying to do more of it. I want to thank you both for being here, for being at the meeting this morning, and for contributing to that conversation, and also for helping. But yeah, reaching out through high school programs, middle school programs, I think not just to convince people that they should consider architecture as a career, but to think about architecture as a course of study, to be able to do the kind of things that both Margaret and Sara were suggesting architects can do, and maybe only architects can do by virtue of the training they have. We're starting to get a few questions. I'm gonna, because I don't want to keep you all night. We usually go about an hour 5, 10, something like that. I want to switch over a little bit and transition a little bit to let's say the job market, the job situation. That's the ostensible purpose of this series. But I was both thrilled, and I'm sure everybody here was thrilled to hear that you all are. That jobs are continuing to come in. Well, they're not coming in, you're going out, you're finding them. There's new opportunities there. You're prepared to take advantage of those because of the kind of firms you are and because of the kind of people you are. I wonder what you all might, what kind of advice can you give to our graduates? I mean, you take a short look and it looks kind of bleak out there. We had a lot of students graduate last year still looking. They're sending things out constantly. What do you all have? What does it look like to each? What does it look like from your perspective? The horizon, the job market, the industry. What does it look like in your firm? Are internships still possibilities? What's happening? What's the job market look like to you all?
I don't know, go ahead.
You want me to start?
Sure.
Well, I would say, obviously from March till now was difficult, for sure. And it just now in our office, like we did recently hire one new person, and we, depending, knock on wood or whatever, if we start to get a few things in, we might be in a position to hire a few more people. Of course, we're going to be cautious about it, as Sara was saying, because you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. But last summer we did have internships. We had less than normal, but we did have some. And generally speaking, since John and I both teach at SciArc, this is a nice resource for us. And we often hire students that we know and that we've worked with well and so forth. But probably this summer, if we're still remote, last summer we didn't take on that much because we were remote and we just had started being remote, and we weren't sure how productive people could be and how productive we could manage people. But if we are still remote this summer, I think that we'd be able to bring on more than we did last summer because we kind of are more exercised at it. But that being said, we hope to be back in the office by this summer. Last summer, the whole time we kept thinking, well, we'll be back in the office. So the whole time we kept thinking, well, surely we'll be back in the office. Oh, surely we'll be back. But we just never made it.
September.
We did a few things, like at the end of the summer, we did some field trips to the job sites with our whole office, just to get everyone out and, socially distance with masks. But my gut feeling is some of my students who are asking the questions, they're in third year. So for you guys, by the time you graduate, I feel like it's going to turn around. I feel like, Eric, to your question, you should go out and get a job. Don't go to grad school right away. Get some experience. I don't know, but that's probably I worked for 5 years before I went to grad school, and I found that incredibly useful for when I did go to grad school. I was just so much I just had so much more facility and so much more abilities by the time I went to grad school that then I was really able to like just fly and be exceedingly productive in grad school, which I did have to pay for myself. So then that made it worth it. But so I highly recommend working after undergrad before grad. It's really good for you. But I think, and then those of you that are already graduated, I guess my suggestion would be network. If I was you, and I would take a job that wasn't architecture, try to get it as related as I could and keep looking for the architect. Like if I needed money, I would take any job I could get. You know what I mean? I would work at Starbucks if I needed money. I wouldn't hold out for the perfect job. I would just like, but at the same time I was working at Starbucks, I would like keep sending out my resumes, keep doing networking things, keep looking for your, like when I first moved to New York City, I had just come back from Berlin. I was living in Berlin and I was working for an architect in Berlin for about 9 months. And I moved back to New York City and I needed money. And so I just took a job out of the newspaper and I was lucky to get it. And, but it wasn't where I wanted to be. He was a great guy. His name was Spivak, his last name. And we worked on, you know, I mean, I was drawing bathrooms or whatever. And then while I had that job, I just kept looking for the real job that I wanted. And eventually I got a job at Polshek's and Partners. So, you know, sometimes you have to take a job that you don't want just because you need a job, and then you can still keep looking for the real one that you want. So, and when I first moved to LA years later, and I worked for other people when I moved here, I applied to 120 firms, you know, and I got 3 interviews. Like, so that's the ratio. So I always tell my daughter, who is, you know, she's in 3rd year of college. She's not an architect, but I always tell her, you know, sometimes looking for a job, you need like the machine gun approach. Like you just need to like blanket it, you know what I mean? Just blast it out there and like, it's like expect a 2% return, you know?
Yep. Yeah, I think, yeah, sure. I would say the same thing. You know, networking is really important. I think I would also suggest to be flexible, to offer perhaps that if you could work month to month someplace. I would never take a job that you're not being paid for. So you should be getting paid regardless. But maybe you can offer, because firms are anxious and nervous about the future. So you could say, well, if you need help, you know, in short term, I'm available. And offering that, I think, would go a long way while you are looking for something more permanent. And also just by demonstrating your abilities in that month, you know, there could be an opportunity then that you would be hired more full time. I think that, you know, I feel positive about the projects that we've gotten, but truthfully, it's a little unknown out there. We don't know what 21 is going to look like. We were lucky to have enough backlog and enough projects to get us through probably first quarter of next year, but it's constant. So we've got to keep it going. And, you know, I know firms in the city who've lost, you know, who've laid a lot of people off and things like that. So we just have to stay positive and really keep hustling and for the work. But I also think, you know, this time has also allowed everyone to recalibrate their values, think about what kind of projects they want to work on, what kind of offices they want to work in. You know, maybe you think you can't be choosy or picky, but I think that it's important to think about all of these things during this strange time. And, you know, just best foot forward. And I think the approach of really applying to as many places as possible is the right approach, and really contacting any loose connection you might have to seeing what's out there.
But also there's other things you can do to like sustain yourself. Well, like some of the students in my studio. Abby, are you here? No, Abby left. Oh yeah, you're here. Abby. Maybe she's not listening. Well, some of the students in my studio, in my current studio, have like made businesses for themselves. Like Abby's making jewelry with her 3D printer, and she's developed a website and she's selling her jewelry on her website. that she makes with her 3D printer, and she's not using her 3D printer for architecture now because we're using animation and digital, because not everyone has a 3D printer. So like there's ways you can be inventive with your skills, and there's things like Etsy out there, and there's lots of ways where you can create your own cottage industry about whatever, making a little widget. You can figure out a widget to make. And there's other ways,
opportunities.
there's other ways you could sustain yourself while you're continuing your job search for architecture.
Could I maybe swing back around? Margaret, you dealt with this. I want to ask Sara this question, and then swing back to Margaret about it again. I'm assuming, Margaret, the internships that you had last summer were online.
Yeah, it was all Zoom.
Or maybe they weren't, but maybe,
yeah.
I know Sarah's office participates with us in our New York City program. I mean, that's a program that has really kind of created its identity around working with firms, internships. And I know, thanks Sara and her office for working with a lot of our students. And I know you've hired a number of our students over time. What is the internship? I'm not putting you on the spot and asking you about internships now, but what does the internship situation look like to you all? And were you doing them online, and will you be doing them online? And what does that look like?
Yeah, we will continue to do internships, and I hope we will find students from the Syracuse program, because it's always been very successful. It's really challenging, because if you have a couple of years experience, you can sort of jump in a little bit more quickly. I think everyone in the office is very, very stretched and really just up to their ears in work. And so the idea of having to handhold an intern is tough, but we all know that it's important to do. So as much of a self-starter that you can be, or a go-getter, will help facilitate that work, because when we're all together in the office, you can walk by somebody and say, oh, no, don't do it like that, or something. But when you're alone in your apartment and you're working on something that someone gave you, and you could be completely going down the wrong path, it's very challenging. So I think being communicative, asking when you're in an internship, asking what you can do, like checking in, trying to stay present with the people in your team is really very important. And it will be amazing what the impact you will have on the office if you are that kind of a leader in your own work, and not waiting always to be given something, but sort of be preempting it, because it's especially hard, as I said, to know what people are working on all the time when we're all remote. So that it's really for a young person that doesn't have a ton of experience, having that positive attitude and that real go-getter attitude is really what's going to set you apart in these challenging times of trying to train people and teach them. So.
Right. I couldn't agree more. Actually, and that's another thing that what Slack was helping us with. And again, for you, probably Teams, but like, our interns could put their work on there when they were done. They could put their questions on there. They could say, hey guys, I'm done with that. What else can I do? Do like that kind of gumption, like again, not waiting for it to come to you, but really like seeking it out. And also understanding that like, it's really important in the workforce to like work efficiently. You can't like sit around and mull it like, well, what should I do? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? You just gotta get it done. But my students already know that about me. So
yes, that is a motto of ours too. Get shit done. Get it done.
Wow, can we quote you on? I mean, we will definitely quote you on that, Sara, for sure. So look, we don't want to keep you all night. We've been on about an hour. Do either of you have any closing comments, advice, suggestions for us? We've entertained a couple of questions on on the chat, but we haven't had a lot. If anyone has a burning question that you would like to ask, you will not have many other opportunities in the immediate future to ask either of our great graduates. You won't have an opportunity to ask a question straight up like you can right now, so please do. If not, I don't know, Sarah and Margaret, do you have any closing
I'll just say this was great. Thank you so much. And
comments?
Sarah, it was so great to hear about what your experience is. Your office is obviously, I mean, we're similar in some ways, but very different in other ways. Like it's a much larger, I mean, I can't even imagine. I'm sure that's like much harder to manage 65 people. Sometimes 8 people feels overwhelming. But it's fascinating to hear what's going on with you guys.
Yeah, same with you, Margaret, and thank you, Michael, for this opportunity. It was great, and yeah, I think I think what's most important, and I tell myself this every morning, is we have to stay optimistic. It seems like there's, you know, every day is a big roller coaster ride on many levels, as we all have recently experienced with our larger world. But for architecture students, I really try to stay positive. You're getting an amazing education. And I think fundamentally architecture is about optimism. And I think to keep that in mind is super important. And I'm telling that to myself as much as I'm telling it to you. So.
Yes, agreed.
Wow. Well, thank you both. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. It's great to see everybody here. We will continue to do these. We'll probably, I think we have 2 more in December. They'll be on our website soon, and would invite you all to come back for. We'd be happy to be joined by Margaret, by more of your students from SciArc. SeerArc and SciArc are not too many letters apart. We're actually all closer than it might seem. But great to see everybody here. Thank you for coming. Look forward to seeing everyone again in a future meeting. And yeah, thank you all again. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Stay safe.
Yep. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.